One, two.
Take notes and nobody can read them.
That's about it, yeah. My notes are abbreviated quite a bit. You know, I never write Messianic Kingdom. M-E-S-S-K-I-N, M-K, that's it. M-K, that's beautiful. Start in a moment. It's good to have you. Start in a moment. I think it will be the group for today. One more is coming, I think. We're going to wait. Just in preparation for the class, make sure that you are in Philippians chapter 2, verses 5 to 11. We have reached verse 7 today. I'm going to make just a concise review of what was told and so on, and then we carry on. Perhaps with one of the most important doctrine to understand to an extent, a doctrine that can be confusing because it's the humanity of God. Hello, Sue. Good to see you. But not confusing to the point for us to strive to imitate. That's what we have learned actually in verse 5, as have this attitude in yourself. Before we carry on, I wrote on the board for tonight at midnight to move your clock forward, spring forward. This is this weekend, not to forget to be in church not too early or too late. I never remember these, but too late or beautiful. And you know our widows, say that we like to honor widows. And when the church was functioning in this place, we had three. The one that I don't hear from her was Krista Stagaman. She doesn't come to class anymore. And we have also Kathy Wilkins, that comes occasionally in classes, and Karen Croft. Karen Croft, that's the one that is from Honeymoon Bay. She had an accident with her car. She's the one driving the little pickup truck that she totaled, basically flipping over, and totaled the truck without any kind of insurance on it. So she's without a car right now, so I would like to pray that for her to be able to get into a car business, affordable price and so on. If you know somebody that has an older car to give or to sell or whatever the case could be, I do not, but we can pray and do something for her. She's one of our widows and she's far off in the west, so that's basically it. So I want to lift up these things in prayer with you this morning. Thank you for coming. Thank you for showing the interest in the emptying of the Messiah, which is very much part of the book of Philippians, and I'm going to try to finish it properly today with you, and then we'll carry on with the older style of the book, when the conversational style will carry on. So for the time being, let us pray. Take a silent time and pray. Father, as a cluster in the faith, keen people to learn, people of the family of the faith, we lift up unto you Karen, with the affliction that she's been afflicted with. Sustain her, dear Lord, speak to her in the affliction, keep her warm in the faith. And if you have something special for her as far as a vehicle to move herself back and forth, Father, we rely on you and the capacity of the body of faith to provide for these things in secret. This morning we have come here expecting to hear we will. It cannot fail, because every single time that we read the text, that we read the verses and so on, This is your word, and your word does not fail. But despite of it, we need to come with a spirit of teachability, to be taught, to submit, and to strive to do something about what we learn. And in this case, it's to strive to imitate you for the short period of time that you have been on the planet, concerned with the proper things, being in your Father's business. Open our hearts to be able to learn these things, to put them into practice now, not tomorrow, but now, to practice these things, to have this mind in ourselves. All of us are in need of it, because humility is not necessarily part of us. Some are more humble than others, but since the fall, it's basically absence in the mindset, and this is something that needs to be put in practice into this world. We rely on you, dear Lord. In Jesus' name, amen. Beautiful. Page 1, still on your outline. Arabic, not Arabic, but Roman numeral 2. The epitome of humility, the kenosis, from chapter 2, verses 5 to 11. I gave you a comparison last week. Moses, the most humble on the earth, but when Christ became incarnate, it was no longer the example to follow. Moses can be an example to follow, but what we are to imitate here, it's the mind of Christ and its state of humility. I gave you, if you look now on your outlines on the kenosis, not the outlines of the book of Philippians, you have two sets of outlines right now. Your kenosis, can I give you? Hello, sister. Place your hand on that. I'm just going to make a short review. The term ekenosin or kenu, it means to empty oneself, and so on. And importantly, in Arabic number 3, basically under A, the meaning, I said to you that when he took upon him the likeness of sinful flesh, it was without giving up deity. And this is very, very important for us as we discuss Christianity with others. We cannot diminish deity 1 ounce, because it stops to be God. It stops to be deity. So without giving up deity and without reducing humanity. The best sentence that you can remember for this, that God, when Christ became incarnate, he was fully God, and he was also fully man. Okay? I always use the same thing politely. Was he having the desire to do things or the need to go to the washroom? It's an absolute yes. Full humanity. So if you are asking me, did God went through puberty? He did. The first hair on the chin and so on and so forth. That's what he did. And just that should create in us a state of awe. Because one of the reasons for the incarnation was to provide for us an example to follow in his humanity. And keep in mind that we have caused the incarnation in the flesh. Incarnation means in the flesh. And he came in the flesh. Debbie, can you see the bar? Or Fred? Fred is better positioned. Debbie, remain seated. Good. You can see the bar going. Good stuff. And keep in mind, what was I desiring to say here? That we caused it, okay? Because he had to become in the human form, in the likeness of sinful flesh, yet without sin, to redeem us. And that gives you the answer. Is there salvation provided for angels? It's no. No, there is no. The demon cannot repent. Why? Because he would have had to take upon himself angelality, to coin a word, to become an angel. And he never became an angel. Is there salvation provided for animals? No, because he would have had to become an animal of some kind. But he has chosen to come in the flesh, in humanity, because salvation is provided only for you and I and all the people that walk on the planet. And he never took Mars, the extraterrestrial. So there is no people existing of any planet except on the earth. There is no life out there. because there is no salvation provided apart from mankind. What we did, we started the exposition. Keep on minding in verse 5. It's just a review. Also, have this attitude in yourself which was also in Christ Jesus. It's an ing form. You keep going. Keep on minding, be minding. Strive to imitate. And what we strive to imitate is the pattern of his humanity. Verse 6, who although he existed in the form of God, did not regard equality with God a thing to be grasped. Okay, the Greek word is being. I don't want to repeat everything, but scroll down to number 5 on your page 3 of your outline. Whatever the kenosis was, it was not a laying aside of deity. If it happens to you, I don't think it will, unfortunately, because I would like you to share this with your people. But if it happens that you share the kenosis, which is the epitome of humility, part of the Christology, and they said to you that he laid aside his deity, that stands in need to be corrected in love, but it needs to be corrected. Cannot think that way. He never laid aside his deity. All right? And the point 9, that Jesus existed in the form of God. He was God. That's what he was before the incarnation ever took place. And this is at that place, I think, that I said to you that John chapter 1, verse 1, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, precedes Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. And what do you mean, François, by this? The second person of the triune God was in the mind of God, was in the plan of God. We cannot pinpoint a date, but way before Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. And you cannot pinpoint a date because they were ever existing, the triune God. And our mind cannot fathom that. You remember the little Sony shoebox here with the forward FF and REW, and then when you rewind the tape, so place your finger, put a brick on the rewinding of the tape and let it go for an existence of humanity, and it has to keep going, because as far as you can rewind the tape backward, God was always in existence as well as the second person of the triune God. But at the point of time in humanity, he became incarnate. Philippians chapter 2, verse 6b here, that he never, basically, he did not regard equality with God as something to be grasped here. And the word is booty, okay? He never embraced it. He never considered his equality with God a warrant for seizing or grasping for himself the glory that comes with it. He never boasted in it. He never showed off with this. He never said, it's mine and I will keep it. It was always his anyway. He did not count equality with God, number 4, as something to be used selfishly for his own enrichment. And the Greek word is booty. You know, this is the booty. This is what the gold and the war, when we basically attack a city and you take the booty of it. He never considered it this way. He did not covet that equality with God, for it was eternally his, actually. He was content with what he had. Should make a note. He was happy with what he had. How can we imitate that? You have a gift of the Spirit. When I was young in the faith, I was coveting David Jeremiah. I was coveting Chuck Swindoll. These famous dispensational teacher, but I was not mature enough. So, François, how can you imitate me? Christ never basically boasted in equality with God, since he was always, be happy with what I've given you. That's the way you can imitate the kenosis. Be content and give what you need to give. Now we come basically to what we call the crux of the matter in chapter 2, verse 7. I have a few things for you, a few slides. I'll take my time.
What's the first word on point 1?
Yeah,
The
we
3.
skipped that.
The emphasis here. Semicolon is on the blank of Christ with God.
Deity. Are you talking about 6b.1?
Yeah, under number 3.
Under number 3, Philippians chapter 2, verse 6b, 5 points. Number 1, deity. The emphasis here is on the deity of Christ with God. 6b, it did not regard equality with God a thing to be grasped. What is the equality with God? It's his deity. Okay? Number 7, 11 points to do with this. We start the work, slow down, and help me out to convey that properly. Chapter 2, verse 7. But he emptied himself, taking the form of a bondservant, circled bondservant, and being made in the likeness of men. We stop there. I need to clean that up and basically examine that almost word for word. The emphasis here is on the incarnation of Christ, the very act of self-emptying. When he became in the flesh, that's what it means. Incarnation means in flesh. It happens in the course of time. He was always God, and in the course of time, about 2,000 years ago, he came in the flesh at the incarnation. And when he was in the womb of his mother Mary, that was the emptying for him. And when he was born. Keep in mind one thing, that there was nothing miraculous in the birth of the Messiah. The birth was not miraculous. Jesus was born in the exact same way that you and I was. The miracle stands into the conception of Christ. It's in the conception. We should note, number 2, parenthetical, what the verse does not say. When we read, but emptied himself, a kenoson, taking the form of a bondservant, and being made in the likeness of men, what it does not say, it does not say that Jesus emptied himself out of the form of God. That's your fill the blank. He never emptied himself out of the form of God. Turn the page. Nor did he empty himself out of his equality with God. He was always equal to God. Your fill the blank is equality. Your fill the blank in that case is equality. The slide doesn't go. I will give you the slides in due time. Nor, see, that he exchanged the form of God for the likeness of man. He never exchanged the form of God to become a man. Because some kenosis, theologians that teach the kenosis, they say that he exchanged the form of God to take upon himself the likeness of man. We need to be careful. It's not on your outlines right now. We need to be careful not to go beyond what the text is saying in chapter 2, verse 7. Okay, it's a good way to study the Bible. Sometimes when you take a verse, you need to ask yourself what it does not say before you get into what it says here. Number 3, the statement, but emptied himself, is an incomplete thought in itself. It's unfinished. If you leave it there, it's incomplete. The way to complete it, what follows, describes the nature of the humiliation. So we need what follows. If we stop in the text, but emptied himself, it's incomplete. You need what follows until verse 11. And this is here, but emptied himself, that you have the word ekenoson on your page 1. Ekenoson on your page 1. This is not on your note before I move on to A or B. You can note what I say right now. Ekenoson refers to a definite crisis act of Christ. It refers to a definite crisis act of Christ. It was a self-imposed humiliation. Nobody forced him to do that. It was a self-imposed humiliation. It was a self-imposed humiliation culminating to his death on the cross. It culminates to the death of the Messiah on the cross. It was a self-imposed crisis in his life. Basically, as much as the fall of man, he knew about the fall of man before everything. And the plan of salvation was already in place. He knew it. Because remember a slide that we did in Ephesians, his decrees are unsearchable and they are for his own glory. Humanity will fall, I will become a man, and I will redeem some. So right there, we ought to keep silence completely. Any kind of argument in his ways are basically unacceptable. You stop there. Mankind fell, Genesis chapter 3. They became spiritually dead, Adam and Eve. And he clothed them with skin of animals shedding blood. That's the gospel. Adam and Eve broke branches of a palm tree. It does not bleed. They covered their physical nakedness, but they were incapable. They, Adam and Eve, were not capable of covering their spiritual nakedness. It has to be a work of God, and then in their face, he clothed them, taking away the fig leaves type of thing, and clothed them with animals, skins of animal. For the first time, Adam and Eve witnessed on the ground the shedding of the blood, hence the forgiveness of sin. The point that I'm trying to make right now, it was a self-imposed crisis. I thank you for not saying, beautiful. If we review that, if we review together, you just come to a little bit of spiritual dizziness, and you just relax. Are you saved? Yes. Thank you.
You know your 2C where you say, nor that he exchanged the form of God for the likeness of man, would be very much putting ourselves up on some pedestal if we thought we were the epitome of what. But we are made in the image of God, not him becoming like us. There's no possibility.
That's why I said that the closer I can get to what you just say right now, it's mankind does not have the capacity to clothe themselves spiritually. If you start at that place, we never ever woke up one day, whatever the date, whatever the hour of the day, today I give myself to Christ. Oh. Men do not have the capacity to do it unless God draws him. John chapter 6 verse 65. No one, I don't know, I'm not sure, check it out. No one can come to me, he says, unless the Father draws him. And don't lose sight. The point is, it was a self-crisis. Small a, you write, taking the form of a servant. B, becoming. And number 3, being. Now you can raise your hand and look at the screen. The word taking here, but emptied himself, taking, becoming, and being the form of a bondservant here, and he was fashioned as a man here. And these 3 participles in Greek, I give you the definition, a participation in the action or state of a verb. What's the verb? Ekenosen. He emptied himself, taking, becoming, or being in the form of a bond slave, or a man if you want to. All right? These 3 participles basically follows the verb. He took, he became, and he was a man, or a bond slave. Number 4, the clauses above show that what the emptying consisted. What the emptying consists, we get close to the crux of the matter right now. He took, become, and being here a bondservant, being made in the likeness of man. We're getting very, very close to the emptying right now. The clauses, number 4, above, show what the emptying consisted. Number 5, emptying means being taken on the bond slave form. Bond slave form. And it doesn't say slave only. The word bond is very, very important here because you can be a slave without your consent. That's why Paul often calls himself a bondservant or a bond slave. He did it willingly. Because of all the benefits of his father that he received in doing this, it was not burdensome for him to do so. He was willing to obey to the point of dying the worst kind of death ever. Because he knew what would come with it. That's discipleship proper right away, right there. He became a man, number 6, and he had a real human nature. Romans chapter 8, verse 3. Romans chapter 8, verse 3. Listen closely. All of those people that says that you need to keep the Sabbath and the law of Moses and the 10 commandments are still there. For what the law could not do, weak as it was through the flesh, God did. Sending his Son in the likeness of sinful flesh, and as an offering for sin, he condemned sin in the flesh. Your famous Mosaic law has been nailed to the cross, never to come back again, including the 10 commandments. The law is a unit. It cannot be divided into 3 sections and so on and so forth. He became a man and he had a real nature. Number 7, he did not divest himself of deity nor of any of his attribute. This is not a valid interpretation of the kenosis. He never divested himself of the deity nor of any of his attributes. And here we come to the bottom line of what the kenosis is all about. You have it on your notes right there. Here we come, number 8, to the bottom line of what the emptying is all about. I read it 2 times, you note, and I'm going to ask you to do something in a moment of time. Here. And we go for it. What he emptied himself of, semicolon, column, is the independent use of his divine attributes. He always had these attributes. He was always omniscient, omnipotent, and omnipresent. But Jesus would never use any of his divine attributes independently. He gave up or emptied himself of the right for his independent use of his divine attributes. That's what he emptied himself of. Second time before I paraphrase it a bit. What he emptied himself of is this. He gave up the independent use of his divine attributes. He always had these attributes. He was always omniscient, omnipotent, and omnipresent. But Jesus would never use any of his divine attributes independently. He gave up or emptied himself of the right for his independent use of his divine attributes. That's what he emptied himself of. And notice one thing in verse 7, the word end, A-N-D, in verse 7, go there. Circle the word A-N-D, end. It's not in the Greek. But emptied himself, taking the form of a bondservant, being made in the likeness of man. The word "en" is not in the Greek text. As a servant, he would never independently use his divine attributes. If he does, and he does. If he does, and he does. I will give you example in a moment. It was never by his own human will, human spirit. It was always independent. Father, are you okay with this? Do it. Spectacular. So strive to have this in mind, verse 5. Strive to imitate that. What should we be imitating? Christ in his humanity. You want to plant a church, Francois? Don't do it apart from my consent. You want to do a ministry, street ministry? Rely on me. Be dependent on me. If not, we do it in the flesh. Can you imagine this? I'm going to give you scriptures. It's going to speak louder. Come with me to all of them, please. You turn with me to the book of Isaiah, chapter 50. I'm going to say something. You might be hit by this, but so be it. On my desk, there is a class on discipleship proper ready there. I bought 11 books. TSM paid for it, therefore you paid. Designed for discipleship, Dwight Pentecost. I read the book in full. Prepared a class for a seminary in the United States to be given to that place first. I offered it to Summit Bible College, the college that I've graduated from. Refused. I offered it to churches here in the Cowichan Valley. Dismissed. Not interested. Why do I say this? Simply because the people are not interested anymore into discipleship. And I understand, and it's a good thing, because it's very costly. Cost a lot. Cost your existence. Isaiah chapter 50, verse 4 onward. Think, kenosis. It's a messianic passage. Do you know what is a messianic passage?
About the Lord Jesus.
Yes. The Lord God has given me the tongue of disciples, that I may know how to sustain the weary one with the word. He awakens me morning by morning. Can God sleeps? I'm asking you a question. Can God sleeps? No. Unless he becomes a human being. He awakens me morning by morning. He awakens my ears to listen as a disciple. In the humanity of Jesus when he was young, picture what you want. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And he was taught by God the Father about his mission. He awakens me morning by morning. He awakens my ear to listen at this disciple. The Lord God has opened my ears. It's the word pierce, to understand. I was not disobedient because he knew the final outcome of becoming a man. Nor did I turn my back. I gave my back to those who strike me, and my cheeks to those who pluck out the beard. I did not cover my face from humiliation and spitting, because the Lord God helps me. As a result, therefore, hence, I was not disgraced. And therefore, I have set my face. God does not have a face. God is a spirit. As a result, I set my face like a flint, and I know that I will not be ashamed. A bondservant. Verse 7 of Philippians, you can return there. Verse 7 of Philippians. But emptied himself, taking the form of a bond slave, bond servant. Awakened morning by morning, and he never questioned his calling. Why do I question mine? I have the answer to that. A lack of faith. Matthew chapter 25, 24, verse 36. The gospel account of Matthew. I will never get over it. 24, verse 36. When I sent a person to Matthew, it's not to look down, it's not to look down. When a teacher sends you to Matthew 24 and 25 chapters, is sending you to the end time. That's what we call the Olivet Discourse. Don't question this, it's located in Matthew 24 and 25. And in Matthew 24, 36, it says this. But of that day and hour, no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, nor the Son, but the Father alone. The context, the rapture. And some people, they try to date the rapture today. They study Revelation and they try to date the rapture. If it was hidden from the humanity of Christ, and if it was hidden from the angels above, why do you try to pinpoint the date? Ain't gonna work. Did he know the rapture in his deity because he never gave up omniscient? Of course he knew. But in his humanity, he did not know. Do you know what I would have done? The emptying of innocent. We have just learned that he emptied himself, okay, of the right to use his omni attributes independently from God the Father. He had the right to use them because, why? Because he's God. But he said, I'm not going to use them. If I would have been Christ, you go in the corner and said, wait for me, guys. Apostle, stay there, please. What's the date again? Or, you know what? I'm not going to go to the Father. I'll tell you because I like you. August the 13th, 2037. It was not the will of God for him in his humanity to know it.
Means he didn't have to lie.
That's it. But when he will be resumed in his glory, he always knew it. Be at all, please. Be. He never showed up. Oh, you the 12, you're so good. Specifically you, Judas Iscariot, I kind of like you. You're part of the plan. Do you think that he could have dismissed Judas Iscariot in the microwave, not even having to push the button? Here's it is, the betrayer. Bye. Stayed around. He was in charge of the donation box. Judas Iscariot would be deceived to be in charge of mine. Getting carried away again, Friday. It doesn't go in. We study it, but we know that it doesn't go in. Matthew 26:42. This is the plot to kill Jesus. He went away again a second time and prayed. You read it? Did you know that? You know that by heart, some sort of. But read it with the lens, with the glasses of the kenosis. He went away again a second time and prayed, saying, "My Father, if this cannot pass away unless I drink it, you will be done." He's God. He could have changed himself and execute the second coming right away. He could have said, "No, let's scratch that plan, Father. I don't want to go to the cross. We can do it without." Went to the cross. It was not the will of the Father for that cup to pass away because of you. Because of you. How much more? Do you think that God will ask you to go to the cross for mankind? Or for the street people of Duncan? He won't. It's already done. How much more should we engage into this without wasting time? That we may learn how to do the kenosis. The first one that should be the student is Francois. Christ Jesus, teach me to be dependent on you as you have been dependent on the Father in your time of humiliation. And Christ will say to you, you know your kenosis. 5:19 of John. Who has a good voice? Debbie, usually you're nice and loud. 5:19. Listen to that. Listen to this with the kenosis in mind. Debbie, come on. This microphone is here. I'm going to get closer to you. Nice and loud.
Then Jesus answered and said to them, "Most assuredly I say to you, the Son can do nothing of himself, but what he sees the Father do. For whatever he does, the Son also does in like manner."
The Son can do nothing of himself. No! It doesn't make sense. He can. But he gave up his independent use of his divine attribute to become dependent on the Father. Cannot understand that without the Keno. 5:30. What was it, 5:19? Mm-hmm. Debbie, 5:30. Help me out a bit. 5:30. It's another senseless unless understanding what we study right now. Debbie.
I can of myself do nothing. As I hear, I judge, and my judgment is righteous, because I do not seek my own will, but the will of the Father who sent me.
What can I say to that? Read Philippians chapter 2, verse 7. 6:38, Debbie.
6:38?
6:38.
In Philippians?
Shame, John?
John,
Mr. John?
6:38. For I have come down from heaven, not to do my own will, but the will of him who sent me.
Was he capable of doing any kinds of miracles? He did 3 messianic miracles. Healing of Jewish leprosy. Go show yourself to the priest as a testimony unto them. Because the rabbi, they thought that only God would do it. They bring to him a demon mute and dumb. Could not speak, could not ask the name of the demon and say, get out of here. What did he do? Cast the demon out. Messianic miracle, a miracle that was labeled by the rabbi. God only can do it. This is a usage of his divine attributes. Never independently. And the last one is even better. The last messianic miracle, Psalm paragraph 118 in your Harmony of the Gospel. If he would have done that miracle in the time of COVID, he would have been in jail. And he made mud. And he applies it to the eyes. Ridiculous. He could have said, see, I have a bit of back problem making mud. You need to bend over. You know, I pick up my tissue in the morning with my toes. You all do it. I would have said, no, he could have said tissue, come up to my hand. Cannot make clean the Sabbath. It was to prove contrary to the Pharisees. And he opened the eyes of the born blind. You need to be God. Never independent of his Father. 8:28 and 29. John 8:28 and 29.
8:28.
John 8:28 and 29. Debbie, go slow.
Then Jesus said to
Stop, Debbie. Excuse me. Have in mind Isaiah chapter 50. The Lord given me the tongue of a disciple. Debbie, I apologize.
Okay, then Jesus said to them, when you lift up the Son of Man, then you will know that I am he, and that I do nothing of myself. But as my Father taught me, I speak these things. And he who sent me is with me. The Father has not left me alone, for I always do things that please him.
As the Father taught me. Isaiah chapter 50 verse 4 onward provides a nugget of what was the life of Christ when he was young, something that is not recorded in the gospel accounts, that you know only in the Old Testament scriptures. As the Father taught me, God being taught, God being taught, senseless, unless you understand the humanity of the second person of the triune God. Fully man. If he's not, he was fully man. He had to be taught. It's not so much what he gave up. Make a note. It's not nowhere to be seen in your outline. It's not so much what he gave up, but it's more about what he added. And what he added to his divine form is humanity. Come on. Am I going to become like one of them? Yes, you will.
Would you repeat that from the beginning? It's not so much.
It's not so much what he gave up. Hey, okay, you're God for a second here, and you abide into the house of God. I'm sure there is cable there and Wi-Fi and couch like you cannot even imagine. And somebody would tell you you're going to become like one of them. But you will have no place to rest your head. You're going to sleep with them. And these are fishermen. And they were eating raw fish. So when they were talking to you that close, you're going to become like one of them. So it's not so much what he gave up. What he gave up is not a big deal. And you know what he gave up? Name it to me. He gave up the independent use of his divine attributes for 30-some years. But what he added to divinity, what he added to deity is humanity. That's the greatest example ever, ever, ever of condescending and showing humility to buy mankind back to him. Can we start discipleship without 36 meetings of the board? Can we? And you have already started Adolf, to all of you. To all of you. Coffee pause.
But he did use his abilities, but through God's help. Like
Always depending.
he told the fishermen where the fish were, on the right side. He fed the thousands. He knew what, was it Philip or Nathaniel was reading under the olive tree?
Because the Father led him.
Yeah, he knew
Because
all
the
of
Father led him.
that. Yeah.
That's it. He gave thanks to the Father before the food. He did not do it without ignoring.
It all goes downhill.
You're not going to get it. As soon as you try to get it, when you will be returning home and there's 15, 20 kilometers, I got it. And you don't phone anybody. And 20 seconds later, what was it all about again?
This is one of our biggest thoughts that we've done.
This is kind of a, yeah. And the reason why I do it to that extent is because it's in Philippians.
It's like running downstairs to get something and then I got distracted.
You nailed it. What am I doing here again? How come I come here? Olga does that all the time.
The shirt says that you were gonna get the iron, so go back upstairs, get the iron, I came down, iron the shirts, but that's not what I came down for the first time.
That's it? That's the kenosis.
Say it to yourself all the way down the stairs till you get it.
It's along the doorway, you're supposed to be saying it to yourself as you go through that doorway. Oh,
Should I throw them in the garbage, Marilyn?
Whatever you decide. Works for me. Well, yeah, 'cause I don't remember.
All right. Oh yeah, sure. Yeah. They're good. They're good books. I have shown this. There is no, the class is not given. I prefer you to read them than having on the shelf. Have fun. Beautiful. But I like it. I don't have to make a note. One claim to Kathy. She said, I won't bring it back. Thank you for your honesty. But it comes with a prayer. You pray that somebody smart enough would get it for their flock. Now, on this one, I rely on you and on her too. Pray that somebody might say yes. They're just scared of their own shadow.
Francois, I have a question. You offered this to the university. You offered this to the church. Did you offer this to this class and I wasn't here?
No, I never offered this to that class.
Okay.
All right, come back, beloved. Come back, beloved, just for who's in the washroom. Come back, beloved. Go to page 7. Go to page 7 of your outline on the kenosis. We pause before we resume. Go to page 7. Yes. You fill the blanks with me. We paraphrase verse 7. With all the scriptures that we have seen, we paraphrase what the kenosis is all about right now. We paraphrase this. You fill the blanks. Yeah, page 7. Have fun. Fill the blanks. They are on the outline. You fill the blanks. Tell me when you're ready to. He did not count the state of equality with God as something to be grasped at all cost. All the red is your fill the blanks. You tell me. You take your time. Note that it's a paraphrase of it. If you can learn it by heart, that would be nice. You don't have to. He did not count the state of equality with God as something to be grasped, booty, at all costs. That's the Greek word that B-O-O-T-Y, B-O-O-T-Y, and used it as a means of self-enrichment. He never did anything for his self-enrichment, always dependent on the Father, but voluntarily give up the independent use. This is crucial of his divine attributes. Of deity. I'm going to go back. To stoop down, to take on the form of a servant. I forgot the A. And so become a man by means of the virgin birth and the incarnation. To stoop down, to take on the form of a servant, and so become a man by means of the virgin birth and the incarnation. That's end of the paraphrase. I'm going to go back to your slides so that you may make sure what it's all about. It's the addendum on page 7. It did not count the state of equality with God as something to be grasped at all cost. Meaning, it's my own. I can do whatever I want with it. No. He did it, never independent. And use it as a means of self-enrichment, showing off basically as the best. Because he has nothing to gain. He already has everything. But voluntarily give up the independent use. I would circle that on your own note. Of the attributes of deity. He never gave them up, otherwise he is less than God and we are in trouble. To stoop down should be in red. But to stoop down, because his hugeness cannot be measured. And I always picture that childlikely, like when I was a young lad, and you did it, all of you did, when we buy peanuts to go camping, and we do this like this. Come, because there is a squirrel. You stoop down to his level so that he might come to you. To stoop down, to take on the form of a servant. Cannot be a servant if you're not human. And so become a man by means of the virgin birth and the incarnation. Verse 8, 6 points. Philippians chapter 2, verse 8. I was just looking, and you know what I was thinking when I was looking at my page here? I can finish that today. What the heck? What the heck? Why try even? I'm going to carry on, but what's the point of finishing it today? What I want